I am amazed, or should I say alarmed, by the sheer number of times members of Starfleet get coerced, tricked, gaslit, or straight up bamboozled into thinking they are someone else, somewhere else, or supposed to be doing something else other than their actual mission. I'm also endlessly entertained by it. In this live stream, we'll be chatting about my top 7 favorite Star Trek episodes where at least one crew member gets brainwashed. Now, let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today I am super excited to be comparing 7 of my favorite Star Trek episodes that involve at least one character being brainwashed. Now, there is no limit of the number of episodes that kind of fall on this theme or kind of fall on this trope, and I'm not mad at it because it's always interesting. I mean, we could have included some of the episodes we talked about before, like where we talked about Kira on DS9 being brainwashed into thinking she was Cardassian, although that didn't work, or Counselor Troi having to pretend to be Romulan, which wasn't a total brainwash, but she had to act as such. In fact, there are a bunch of episodes I was going to add as honorable mentions, and I think there are like 10 additional episodes on my list that use this kind of theme of either being brainwashed or being gaslit or something like that, being trapped in the holodeck and everything's freaking out around you. But these 7 episodes we're going to talk about today are the episodes that I adore, that I will like watch over and over and over. And the other ones, even though they fit better in this theme, some of them I just was like, but they're just not great. So we're going to talk about episodes I love. So I hope you love them too. I hope you're excited. Drop in the comments below what your favorite brainwash episode is from Star Trek. And let's see if your favorite episode made the list. I want to say hello to everybody who's watching live. Hi. Hello to everyone watching on the replay. If you are watching on the replay, as always, there are timestamps below, so you can skip ahead at any time. Now, without further ado, let's get started with our first episode on the list. Season 2, Episode 14, Whispers. Chief O'Brien returns from a mission on Parada, but finds the crew and Keiko acting strangely around him and trying to keep him from doing his job. He becomes convinced that there's a conspiracy, and he flees the station in search of the truth. Turns out, he can't handle the truth. Okay, so this episode I recently watched because for those of you who've been following my channel, you know that I recently watched all of Deep Space Nine for the first time and freaking loved it so much. So I can't technically say this is an episode that's on the rewatch list because I've only seen it once so far. I haven't done like a second watch through of Deep Space Nine, but I remember this episode. When I did my review of all of Deep Space Nine, I picked my top 3 and my bottom 3 episodes from every season for the first 4 seasons. And then when I got to season 5, I liked almost every single episode. And so I couldn't pick, a top and bottom anymore. But this episode was on my list of tops. And then I had to kind of cut it out because I was trying to just pick my top 3. But it was on the list of tops. What I really like about this episode is it's such a mystery. And I didn't see it coming. Like, I did not think that's how that was going to end. I didn't know what I thought. I thought maybe he was having a dream or something. But basically, O'Brien is just, he's on the station, he's doing his thing, and everyone is acting so shifty. Everyone is acting really suspicious. And he's slowly being shut out of all his systems. Like, oh yeah, we don't really need you working on this. Oh, you no longer have access to that. And he's like, what's going on? And people are like, what do you mean? Nothing's going on. I mean, he's totally being gaslit. And I think the creepiest part for me in this episode is the scene with Keiko. Whenever Keiko does creepy Keiko, I'm here for it. Because that is like, it's legit terrifying. It's like, why is this character acting this way? But there was a scene with Keiko and it just was really awkward and forced and weird. And O'Brien's just like, something is up. And then when he starts to do this investigation, he's like, I know this all went wrong when I was on such and such planet or moon or wherever he was. And so he was like, I have to go back there to figure out what's going on, like what has happened. And he can't trust anybody. He's on his own. How terrifying is that? He's in deep space and can't trust a single person, including his wife. Then he comes to this cave where everyone's waiting for him. Like, Kira's there, Sisko's there. They're like, hey, sup, what's going on? And he's like, what is happening? He's got his phaser, and Sisko's like, look, I'm going to take my phaser down. Everybody drop your weapons. Like, listen, we can explain everything. And while they're trying to have a conversation with this understandably distraught version of O'Brien, one of the aliens just like blasts him in the chest, as you saw in that little video clip. And Sisko's like, what are you doing? I said no weapons. And they're like, yeah, he was getting a little feisty and he had a weapon. So like, I just decided to end this whole nonsense. And as he's sitting there, like taking his final breaths, Sisko's like, doctor, we need you. And then they open this hidden panel, this other wall, and the real O'Brien is there, and he's like all beat up and roughed up and stuff, and he's like, that's weird, that guy looks just like me. And they tell the poor O'Brien clone who's sitting on the ground, like, you're a replicant, you're basically a clone of O'Brien, and you're a sleeper agent, and you were sent to, I don't know, do some terrorism. I don't even remember what his job was, but assassinate somebody, do something bad. And you just haven't been activated yet. So you have all of O'Brien's memories up until the point where you were copied, right? Then everything that real O'Brien thought was new. But you have all of his memories, all of his emotions, everything else. And then at some point you were going to be activated and turned into some like Jason Bourne style killer. And I mean, how do you even process that? I guess he can't, because he's sitting there with a hole in his chest. He's not going to live long enough to process this information. But I remember at the end of this episode being like, what just happened? What is going on right now? And also, I remember thinking like the ending was so quick. It was just like, hey, you're a replicant. You're not the real O'Brien. You were a sleeper agent. Bye. And then like the episode ends. And I was like, I need more time to process. Like I need somebody to be like, poor guy or something. I don't know. I needed just like a few more beats at the end of that episode to really wrap my head around what just happened. Also, as I'm talking about it right now, I'm thinking about like Tuvix or other characters that have to be ended so that the main characters can stay. And what was Sisko's plan if this alien guy didn't shoot fake O'Brien in the chest? What was the plan? Because obviously we can't have two O'Briens. You're not going to be married to Keiko. You're not going to be raising the babies. That's not going to be a thing. And at some point he's going to be activated and turned into a killer. Will that erase all of O'Brien's memories? Like, what happens to this replicant if the story didn't end with a big hole in his chest? I'm guessing the story would have had to end that way eventually in any case. But just now while I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, that, like, he kind of got a raw deal, you know? Yes, he was an assassin, but he didn't know that. So this is the first episode on the list. Let me know if this episode made your list. I'm going to check the chat, and then we will go to the second episode on the list. And it's going to be a fun adventure to see if I can keep track of all the technology and the video clips and everything else in this new system that I'm in. Okie dokie. Hello. Okay, so Gavin says, OMG, the best episode. Yay, somebody else likes it. Happy birthday, Nadia. Whoop, whoop. It looks like your birthday's next week, but I'm going to say it this week in case I forget next week. / you're not here next week. Let's see. Welcome back, PS2 Chipper. Welcome back to the United States. Great episode. Okay, one of my all-time favorites. Okay, so a lot of people like this episode. Does hacking the Doctor count? I think hacking the Doctor definitely counts as being like tricked, bamboozled, mind wiped, whatever. I would say hacking the Doctor. And also, do you remember that episode in Voyager where the Doctor's like losing his mind and he thinks he's married to Kes, and then he starts reliving what happened with the caretaker and the other crew members? Sometimes they disappear, sometimes they don't. He thinks he's Louis Zimmerman. He doesn't know he's a hologram, like all of that. I think that would also count, even though it's more like a programming error or something, like a computer virus that's messing up his brain more so than an active agent who has something against him. But I think that would still count in this category. That would be one of the many honorable mentions that could make it into this category. Would the TNG episode The Nth Degree count, where they make Barclay super smart? I think that would also count. Again, it's not brainwashing, but it's definitely altering who Barclay is and who he thinks he is and who he knows himself to be. Because at the end of that episode, remember, he's so smart that he doesn't even talk anymore. He's evolved beyond human speech. But remember at the end when the what were the aliens with the big heads called? Whatever. When those people came in and kind of like, you know, had their first contact moment and they took the smartness out of Barclay's brain, he was like, "Aw, I thought I got to keep some of that." You know what I mean? So like he was definitely altered to the point where he could tell when he was unaltered, when he was put back exactly as he was. And he was like, "Oh, I wish I could have kept a little bit of the confidence or something from that experience." But yeah, I would totally count it. Does inner light count as brainwashing? I think inner light counts as gaslighting, which is part of this category. It's brainwashing, gaslighting, bamboozling, making somebody think that they're somebody that they're not, or that they're somewhere that they're not, or that something's going on around them that's not really going on. That all is going to fit in this category. I wonder what happened to the clone. The one who got shot in the chest? I think he died. I was really rooting for fake O'Brien. I was really worried for fake O'Brien. I was like, why is everybody turning on him? We like O'Brien. So yeah, that was such a surprise ending. Such a twist for me. Yeah, so I'll say happy birthday to you next week we're both here next week. Brothers of TNG would count because Soong takes control. Yes, that was another one of the honorable mentions, brothers, where Data is like mind controlled for a hot minute, where he kidnaps everyone on the Enterprise, including the ship, so that he can go and meet with Noonien Soong before he dies. That totally counts. Even though as soon as he gets to the planet, like his mind is back to normal, Soong flips the switch and it turns it off. It still counts. It totally counts because he was not in charge of his actions, and he also didn't remember doing it. It wasn't until Soong was like, "Oh, I repressed the memories here. Do. Now you can remember what happened," or whatever. I love Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee, and he drinks Jamaica Blend. What are we talking about now? Oh, Cytherians. Thank you. The Cytherians. Yes, thank you. The Cytherians. All right, so let's move on to episode number 2 on the list. Season 6, episode 21, Frame of Mind. Riker becomes trapped in a disorienting series of hallucinations while performing a play about madness. He can't tell what's real and what's not, or who he is, or where he is. In the end, he resists the mental probing he's been subjected to and manages to beam himself home. So this is definitely another mind control-y episode. I don't think let's see. I was going to say I don't think the twist is as good as O'Brien's, but that's not actually fair. It's just the fact that I've seen Frame of Mind like 10,000 times and I've only seen Whispers once, so it feels more fresh and new to me. But I really like this episode, Frame of Mind. I mean, granted, it's very disturbing and awful that Riker's being tricked into thinking that he's a mental patient and that he made up the Enterprise because the Enterprise doesn't exist. It's all in his mind. But I love the way they do it in this episode. So Riker's in a play that Beverly put on where he's pretending to be a mental patient. And I definitely don't know the name of these aliens. Whatever the name of these aliens are that are like trying to extract secrets from his brain, they're trying to get information from him by putting him in this like dream state and trying to convince him he's someone he's not. But his mind, his subconscious, is building blocks around itself to protect the information because he can do stuff like that. And his most recent memory is this play. So it kind of intertwines with what they're trying to do to create this fake world for him that combines the play that he was doing on the Enterprise with him really being in that scenario. So it's not like the aliens invented this world. His subconscious invented this world, but it's just so fascinating. Like, it's super interesting. And when you're watching the episode, you're like, okay, he's in a play. That's cool. Oh, wow, he's playing somebody who's lost his mind. That's a bummer. And you keep going and then you're like, wait, it's real? It's definitely not real. And then you're like, wait, is he here though? Like, was he kidnapped? Is this another away mission gone wrong? Is this first contact all over again? And then it's like, oh no, wait, but he's on the Enterprise. Wait, is he sleeping? Is he dreaming? Like, that's the whole like time that you're going through this episode trying to figure out how are they telling this story? And then that last scene where everything just keeps breaking and breaking and breaking and breaking, and then he breaks himself and then he really wakes up, or does he? You know, and then he frees himself from the bad guys and he gets rescued or whatever. I really enjoy this. It reminds me a lot of Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, which is terrifying, and I am not a big horror person. This is how I learned I was not a big horror person, because I would watch stuff like this when I was a kid. And the thing about Freddy Krueger is he kills you in your sleep, and you never know if you're awake or you're asleep. Because the teenagers who Freddy Krueger is after are always like, I know, I just won't sleep. Aha! He'll never think of that. And they just try to stay up all night, and then inevitably they go to sleep. But the way they go to sleep is they'll always be like, laying down or sitting down or something like that, and they'll be nodding off. And then it's just like one of those nods puts them into dreamland. But we don't know which one. So it's like nod, and they wake up and shake their head. And now they're in dreamland and Freddy Krueger's got them. And that I always found that to be like one of the most terrifying concepts in all of horror. This is scarier than a monster's under the bed, because the monster's in your mind and you have to sleep. That's what this episode reminds me of, where you're like, is he awake this time? Is he awake this time? Is he awake this time? And even at the end of the episode, you almost want him to be like computer in program, to see if this is real. But I do really like this episode, and I think it's disturbing, it's upsetting, and it's odd, and it's supposed to be. And I think it was very well crafted, and I think very well delivered. I know some people don't love Jonathan Frakes as an actor. I really loved him in this episode. I was convinced he was crazy. So I'm going to check the chats and then head to the next episode on the list. Okay. Data. Jamaican Blend. Frame of Mind is creepy. Agreed, Nadia. That was like Inception before Inception. Yeah, I remember Inception being very kind of confusing. I don't remember it being scary. I think it was a little more like thrilling, but I do remember it being very confusing. I remember at the end of the movie, I was just like, so what does this mean? And everybody that I talked to who saw the movie was like, I don't know either, which I guess was the point, right? Yes, Patty says disturbing. The Trek reviewer says, does the Jurati Borg taking control of the Federation fleet at the end of season 2 of Picard count? Yeah, that absolutely counts. You know what I thought you were going to say? I thought you were going to say, does it count when the Borg Queen took over Jurati? And I was going to say no, because that wasn't mind control. That was like a partnership where the two of them were like, let's do this. But yes, when the Borg Queen takes over every cadet in the Federation, absolutely that would count. That would be another honorable mention. That was actually a really good episode. Should have added that to the list. Oh well. Hindsight. If that's one of your favorite episodes, drop it in the comments. I am craving spiny lobefish. Sela, what's going on right now? What does that mean? Riker had it coming. What do you mean Riker had it coming? What did he do to deserve such a thing? The budget alone on frame of mind, ... Does that mean the budget was high or low, or you weren't happy with it? Wait, finish the ... Scott. Lieutenant Commander Ariam. What about her? I think I need to finish ... on that too. Some people don't love Frakes as an actor. Yeah, isn't that wild? Yeah, some people do not. I learned a lot in having the TNG podcast about all the characters that people don't like. In fact, this is new. I just learned a couple days ago that there's somebody who cannot stand Beverly Crusher. And was like, I will skip every episode with Beverly Crusher in it. And I'm like, that's a lot of episodes to skip because she's kind of a main character. All right, let's go to the third episode on... Okay, just for the effects, the budget must have been huge. Oh, yeah, probably. And so worth it. It was very, very cool. They served that in the mental hospital. Okay, thank you, Sela, for that. Because I was like, spiny lobefish. I don't know what's going on right now. In Project Damocles before she was killed for Ariam. Yeah, I do remember... you know what, the Trek reviewer? I'm going to have to give you the points on that one because I don't remember what happened to Ariam. I also only watched Discovery once all the way through, and I watched it when it aired. So I only remember Ariam was even on it because she was in a flashback in season 5. And I was like, oh, yeah. So, exact. So PS2 Chipper says Frakes doesn't have the range, yet he excels as Riker. So that's kind of the complaint a lot of people will have. But I don't think that's a fair complaint because the actors are not given things to do most of the times other than saying, aye, sir, reverse the polarity, so we really need episodes like this where we get a chance to see what all they can do, which is why I really enjoy these kinds of episodes. Anyways, moving on to episode number 3.
Season 4, episode 24, The Mind's Eye. Geordi returns from Risa, unaware that he has been programmed by Romulans to assassinate a Klingon official and create an intergalactic incident. As he and Data investigate his crimes, we discover that another Klingon official was behind this entire plot.
This episode I also really enjoy. This is Manchurian Candidate in space, and I really enjoy Manchurian Candidate as well. That's another one where you're just like, what is going on? So in this episode, they actually kind of spill the beans ahead of time. So at the very beginning, we see Geordi's on his way to Risa, and he's just, living his best life on his way to an educational conference, because that's where they have those. They always have those on Risa. For all the intellectual stimulation that the world provides. And then he gets co-opted and kidnapped by a Romulan vessel. They have some Geordi lookalike put on a visor and head on down to Risa in his place. And he gets just tortured and mind washed. It's very, what's the name of that movie? It's called Conspiracy Theory. What's that Mel Gibson movie? Whatever. But they torture him. They put his head into a vice and give all these images directly into his brain, and they use the visor as some sort of trigger to turn on the killer instinct, but it's separate from his conscious mind. So they show us this, so we know what's going on in the episode. So it's not as mysterious as it could have been if Geordi was doing all these weird things and then we found out later why. However, I still like it because there is a twist in the end. So Geordi is going around doing all of these things and not remembering any of it. And because he's the chief engineer, he's erasing his tracks. He's just like going back, he's doing things and then clearing his tracks. And so he and Data get put on the case to investigate what are all these weird things that are happening. At the same time, this Klingon ambassador comes over. I think he said he was an emissary. So yeah, this Klingon ambassador comes over and they are going to have this big conversation with this Klingon governor of some random colony who is saying that the Federation is supplying arms to the Romulans. I almost said Cardassians. To the Romulans. Okay, so he is blaming the Federation and he's claiming that they are sending weapons to the Romulans to use against the Klingons. So that's what this governor is saying. So this ambassador comes on board to say, okay, we're going to like clear all this up. We're going to figure this out. And in the midst of all of this, Geordi's being assigned these different tasks. And his final task is to assassinate the Klingon governor in front of everybody so that without any shadow of a doubt, all of the aides that are there and Picard and everybody can be like, oh, it's true. The Federation really is trying to start some stuff with the Klingon homeworld. They're trying to, start a war with us, and they're trying to partner with the Romulans and all of this. Thankfully, Data figures it out in just the nick of time and orders Worf to kind of take down Geordi, which he doesn't do. But Picard stops him by simply just moving his hand and then taking his phaser away. And Geordi's like, like he's still very much out of it. And Data comes in. He's like, I'm going to answer everything for you. We're going to Sherlock Holmes this piece. Worf, please take Geordi into like the brig or something because he doesn't even know what he's doing right now. So Worf's like, all right, got that. So he explains to them everything that's happened and how there's been some kind of signal on board the ship. The signal is not strong enough to come from anywhere else but on this ship that has been telling Geordi what to do all this time and has been using his visor. And so then Data says the fact that Geordi was activated inside of this cargo bay means the only two people who could have possibly had that device on them was the ambassador or Picard. So then Data's like, turn out your pockets. And y'all know the Federation uniforms don't have any pockets. So there's no way it was Picard. So everybody's looking at, I think his name's Kel or Krell. They're looking at the ambassador and they're like, pockets. And Klingon outfits have all the pockets. Their shoes have pockets. Their hair has pockets. Everything has pockets. So they're like, open up your pockets. Let's see if you have the device. And he's all like, what? No, you can't do that. I'm an ambassador. You can't search me. Da-da-da-da-da. And so Picard's like, all right, fair. And then the Klingon governor, who is now like, oh, he's up to some shady stuff. He goes, well, I am a member of the Klingon empire, so I will happily search you by force to see if that device is on you. So then all of a sudden the ambassador starts backtracking. Actually, no, wait. I request asylum. Picard, I request asylum. And you guys know how asylum goes with the Federation. If anyone says the word asylum, they immediately get asylum. It's like they say magic word asylum and they're like, okay, fine. We'll go to war for you because you said asylum. But in this case, I love it because Picard is so great. He stays true to the Starfleet, I want to say a habit of just saying yes to anyone who requests asylum. However, he adds a little caveat, which I thought was quite clever. And he says, absolutely, we are happy to grant you asylum just as soon as the Klingons finish searching all your pockets and make sure that you don't have that device. As soon as you're cleared of all wrongdoing, asylum is yours, my friend. And of course, we all know he's not going to be cleared of Jack. So it's just such a satisfying ending to see him being dragged away by the Klingons to be searched and punished. And we hope the punishment is very bad. Because not only was he trying to assassinate somebody and trying to frame the Federation and start a war, because he was probably partnering with Ceylon and all that stuff, but also he's making Geordi a patsy and probably would have gotten him killed. Like, he's just not caring about anybody's lives. So I hope his punishment was intense. Then, the very last scene, we see Geordi talking to Counselor Troi, talking about his experiences, which is such a good use of Counselor Troi. She's a counselor. This is where she should come in to say, hey, buddy, you've been brainwashed. You want to talk about it? And Geordi's like, I do. It's really weird because I don't remember being brainwashed, but I totally remember going to Risa. I remember the conferences. I remember what was said. So I guess somehow the fake Geordi that went to the conference, somehow they copy pasted his memories into the real Geordi so that Geordi would have memories of who he talked to and what. This is an assumption. They don't explicitly explain this in the episode, not to my recollection. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments or in the chat. But I don't think they explain exactly how his implanted memories, where those came from, or if they were totally fabricated. But in any case, Geordi has vivid memories of being on Risa. Imagine how terrifying this scenario is, where you're like, but I wasn't on a Romulan ship. I remember the beach. I remember the sand. I remember who I talked to. I remember the conference. I remember the panel that I was in and listened to. Like, I think not being able to trust your own mind has got to be one of the most terrifying things that could ever happen to anyone. It's right up there with like suffocating, drowning, zombie attack, starving to death. You know, all of those really like extreme ways to die slowly and painfully. I would also add to those not being able to trust your own mind. Because even if you are healthy in every other sense of the word, if you can't trust what's real or what's not, it's like your whole foundation is shaken. Which is why mental health is so important. It's so important to take care of your mental health, because I feel like as resilient as we can be as people, as strong and capable as we can make our minds, I also feel like they can be fragile. And if they are broken, it's hard to fix them. And maybe that's why we don't see Counselor Joy doing too much counseling at the end of situations like this. Anyways, okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to episode number 4 on the list. So we're talking about Naked Gun. It sounds like it's good, so that's good, because I like the first Naked Gun, so I'm glad the second one's good. Windgrace says, I love Riker, shows a glimmer of, oh yes, when I show a glimmer of independent thought. Yeah, the speech was really good. Data is great in this episode too. This is a perfect example of a character who's taken over. Why, thank you, Patty. Have you not seen Manchurian Candidate, Nadia? It's a movie. I think it's been remade, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. The one I saw was with Denzel Washington and Glenn Close and this guy whose name I can never remember, but he's been in a ton of stuff, including Scream. It's very good. It's very sad. I don't know what's the word. It's a drama. It's a good movie. It's not happy. It's not bubbly. Don't watch it if you're in a bad mood. You know, watch it if you are in neutral or elevated states, so that it doesn't bum you out for the rest of the week. You can't tell me Jordan didn't pack his Horgon first. Scott, that's funny. Geordi went to Risa and still didn't get any. But Gavin, did Geordi go to Risa? This is the thing. He never even made it to the planet. So this time it wasn't his fault. John Fleck's first appearance in Trek as a Romulan torturer. Oh, interesting. Okay, so Gavin says, I love Manchurian Candidate. The remake was trash. So I don't know how many times it's been remade or which one you didn't like, but recommend in the chat which one's the good one, so Nadia can watch the good one. He remembered his Horgon and still couldn't get any ladies to talk to him. Okay, he wasn't even on Risa. Like, this time, this wasn't Geordi's fault. More pockets, more weapons. Exactly. Hey, DJ Magix. Thanks for checking in from the drive-thru. Be safe. Be safe while you're driving. Let's see. It was a simple misunderstanding, Nadine. Wait. What is that? I remember the Jamaron. The new one didn't have the same joke. What are you... Charisse, focus. Okay, focus. Keep going. I love Geordi's shuttle fight. Playing games with a computer sounds like fun. Yeah, his shuttle flight where you're like, oof. Maybe they need audiobooks back in this time. The Frank Sinatra version is the best version of the Manchurian Candidate. Okay, so there you go. Oh, Nadia. Okay, you don't know why you called Nadia Nadine. Okay, that's where I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a quote. That's why I thought that was. Okay, let's go to the next episode on the list.
Season 5, Episode 25, The Inner Light. A mysterious probe latches onto Captain Picard and transports him to the planet Catan. There he lives an entire lifetime and watches helplessly as his planet slowly dies. Eventually, he is reunited with the family and friends that he's lost along the way, as they tell him that all of this was an elaborate simulation to help preserve the memory of their culture. He awakes on the bridge about 25 minutes after the probe was activated, and the only thing remaining, other than his memories, is a Resican flute.
So this definitely fits in this category of being totally bamboozled.
In this case, Picard was not brainwashed, but he was gaslit AF. So this, what did they call the thing that actually shot him? Not archive, whatever the thing was. Somebody will have it, but whatever. The thing that shot Picard with a beam of knowledge and then put him into this 25-minute long coma and then had him go through this entire experience. For some reason, it picked Picard. It picked only one person and no one else for some reason, but okay, fine, whatever. When he arrives in this new land, when he wakes up and his wife is like, "Are you okay?" and all of that, Picard is like, "What is going on? This is not my world. I'm Captain Picard." Like, he didn't fall for any of that. He ends up living, what did they say? Didn't they say like 25 years? 25 years and 25 minutes? Although at the end of the episode, he looks way older than 25 years old. He looks like it's been like 40 or 50 years. But anyways, in all of this time, it doesn't seem like he has forgotten about the Enterprise. It's just that it's clear that there's no way he can get back. And he has just kind of said, well, this is my life now. At least that's how I read it. Let me know if you disagree in the comments or in the chat. But the way I read this episode was he just was like, you know what? I am here now. I am here now. I am not leaving, because he did try to leave for a couple of days and that did not work. So he's like, all right, this is apparently my life, I guess, whatever. So he had kids, grandkids, like a whole life. He became a part of the community. He became, part of leadership. Of course he did. And then at the very end, this part gets me. Like, I cry every time at the end of this episode. It does not fail. But at the end of this episode, when his wife, who had died like a while ago, in her old age after they already had grandkids, but now their grandkids are grown or whatever. Or no, their grandkid was just born. Anyways, his wife dies, and then he's sitting there, and he's like, their son's about to go nova, the plant's about to die, and then the wife comes from around the corner, and she's like much younger, and he's like, what's going on? And then his best friend who died shows up, and then like all the kids show up, and everyone's holding hands, and they're like, well, you weren't really here. This was just our memories. And he's just like, wow. That scene is like, then he goes, wait, the starship was real? I really am Captain Picard. It's like he always knew that this was true, but he also knew this was no longer his reality, so he just got along with things. But remember his wife, whose name I'm totally blanking on, she was always commenting on his obsession with looking through his telescope and his obsession with looking at the stars and space. And she would say things like, are you still thinking about those delusions about being a space captain? You only had those delusions because you had this fever and you were sick and you were having fever dreams or whatever. But so he never forgot his connection to space and science and everything else. But he accepted that this was his life now. And he actually loved his wife. I believe he actually loved his wife at some point. Like, obviously, when you wake up and someone's like, hey, I'm your spouse, you're like, if you don't get out of here. But eventually, 25 years, thankfully, I think he did end up loving his wife and his children and his grandchildren and everything else. But I think while that part always makes me cry, it makes me cry because I've lost loved ones. My dad passed away when I was 10. I would love to just see him come around the corner and be like, hey, I'm still here. Like, I would have loved that. I've lost so many people. My sister passed away just a few months ago. I would love to see these people just show back up and be like, just kidding, we're all alive, but that's not real life. And so this scene where they come back and scenes like this, it always chokes me up because it just like hits that part of me that wishes that my loved ones could come back and like right now could come back and just like the pain would be gone. And man, it gets me every time. But also, and when I was younger, I just that was enough of the story for me. But now as I'm older, I'm just like, that's such a messed up thing to do to somebody though. Like, that is so messed up, to gaslight them for 25 years into thinking that they're someone totally different, to give them an entire life's experience with kids and grandkids and a spouse and best friend and community, and you're in the, like just all of this like emotional nurturing, and then to just snatch it away and be like, psych, none of it was real. Wake up now. It's just like really messed up. It's really messed up. And this was their plan to make sure that someone remembered them, because they knew their planet was going nova, their sun was going nova, their planet was going to die, and they did not have like warp travel or impulse travel. They didn't have the ability to like leave their planet, so they were all just going to like die holding hands. So it's just,
I don't know, a lot of things about this episode is really sad and heartbreaking, but also kind of messed up, right? Like, how could you do that to Picard? In the end, he doesn't seem worse for the wear. He doesn't seem bitter or upset or, betrayed or anything like I think a lot of people would feel if they were being gaslit. Instead, I think he's just really grateful. Well, this part is me projecting, but that he's grateful for the experience. What we do know is that he has kept all the good parts of that. He's kept the connection and the relationships and how that felt. And he remembers how to play the flute because he's been practicing it for 25 years. And the flute's like the one thing that's left, the one totem that's left from this, whatever this thing was, this memorial in space that kind of deactivated as soon as it delivered its message. So, I mean, they were successful. They were effective in their job of making sure somebody remembered them and remembered more than just what's written on a page, right? Remembered the experience of their culture. But also, I just think it's kind of mean. It's kind of cruel to do this to somebody. And it's not really, and also your entire experience of your culture is just going to be transmitted to one person and then shut off forever. It just is also not very practical, But those are just my thoughts. Okay, I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go to episode number 5 on the list. Ooh, this is getting trickier the more I go. Let's see. So the Trek reviewer says, I thought Airiam was the most interesting new character in Discovery. Oh, new character. Airiam was super interesting. I do like Zora. I loved that that was like the next layer of how can we do an other story, because we had Spock in TOS. We had Data in TNG, like the other who's trying to understand humanity. We had the Doctor in Voyager. We had Odo in DS9. Don't know what we had in Enterprise because I haven't seen that yet. But then we had Airiam, who was, like an android. But then I loved Zora, like a sentient ship. I think that was the perfect next step in a character trying to understand humanity and understand themselves. Let's see. You were right. Yeah, Patrick Stewart's son in this episode was his real son in real life, which I did not know. I did not know until after we reviewed this for the TNG podcast, and somebody was like, that's his real son. And I was like, get out of town. And they were like, you didn't mention that in the podcast. And we were like, we didn't know that during the podcast. Dustin says this might be the most overrated episode of Trek, but it's important in Picard's overall growth across Trek. I think this episode is something that people love. It's one of the most iconic and beloved episodes of Star Trek. And I don't think it's the best episode of Star Trek. I don't think it's the best one. There's so many great episodes of Star Trek, as you would know, Dustin, because you've reviewed all of them. So I could see you saying it's overrated because it is one of the most iconic, one of the most celebrated, one of the most remembered episodes, for good reason. It's because it hits people in the feels. But I also think there are some other episodes that are better, that are or equally good. Kevin, you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you may ask yourself, how did I get here? I love that song. Or maybe love's not the right word, but that song is perfect for this episode. Oh, it's me. I'm the one. I tear up every time. Yes, Patty, that line. Yes, that line when they were like, we put all of our knowledge together so that one person could experience it. And he goes, that's me. You're just like, oh. Yes, thank you for your condolences. I'm sorry, Patty, that you lost your sister too. Losing a sister is just, losing anyone is the worst. It's just the worst. I don't care if it's a pet or a goldfish. Losing someone or something you love is the worst. Projections was the episode of Voyager where the Doctor thought he was a real man. Thank you, the Trek reviewer. And I think that was season 1, right? Projections. I really like that episode. He got to live 2 lives. Yes, Picard got to live 2 lives because when he woke up, he was only 25 minutes older, not 25 years older. So he got to live his entire life again with this new knowledge. But I also think man, how much is he missing? His wife, his kids, his grandkids, his best friend, the people he lived in the city with, because he does not have that level of depth with the crew of the Enterprise. He does have, I think, a really tight bond with the bridge crew. And I think he had a mentor-y relationship with Wesley before he went off to Starfleet Academy. But he doesn't have the depth
with these people that he had with those people, because these people are transient. They can go on another ship at any time. They can quit. They can die. They can be sent on an away mission where they get killed. But in the Dreamland, he was trapped on that world in Catan. So he couldn't, so he kind of had no choice but to embed himself in the community. So I wonder if he missed that too. Just a thought. The scene where he plays the flute has someone else holding it, and when you can't help but notice the arms are at a weird angle. Are you saying that? When Grace, are you saying like someone's like, you know what? I'll ask you later. I'm going to get on a whole tangent on that one. I found the fact out from Star Trek The Next Generation Viewer's Choice Marathon back in 1994 about Picard's son. Oh, so you've known that from the beginning. Yeah, I recently knew that. I didn't learn that until we had the TNG podcast episode about it, I want to say 2 years ago. Okay, now I think it's time for episode 5 on the list.
Season 6, episode 26, and season 7, episode 1, Descent. The Enterprise encounters a group of unusually aggressive Borg who are being led by Data's evil brother Lore. After arriving on a planet of ex-Borg drones, Lore promises them the perfection of becoming purely technological. Unfortunately, he has no idea how to keep that promise. In the meantime, he kidnaps Data and uses him to torture Geordi in the name of fun. I mean, science.
So Data's my favorite character from TNG because I relate to him the absolute most, or at least I did relate to him the most growing up. So any episodes that were just like Data heavy I was usually a big fan. I would say maybe not the episode with the dream, with like the bird and all of that. That was kind of dumb. But other than that, even the other episode with the cellular peptide cake, that episode, I like that episode. It's creepy, it's weird, it's disturbing. We get to eat cake with mint frosting. I'm here for this. So I'm usually a fan of any Data-focused episodes. This is no exception. In Descent, part 1 and part 2, Lore shows up. Yeah, Lore is a real stinker. I agree. Lore shows up. Out of where? We don't know, because last time we saw Lore, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time we saw Lore, he was floating out in space with the crystalline entity, right? Because he was trying to get the Enterprise destroyed or something like that, and Data just like ejected him or something. Somebody ejected him. But anyways, he's found his way to this planet, and this planet also has a bunch of ex-drones, including Hugh, because Hugh got his individuality returned to him in the episode I, Borg, which is such a great episode. So this is a Where Are They Now? And somehow his individuality was passed to all the other Borg in his cube or something. He explains it. I just don't remember. And then they landed on this planet somehow, and Hugh tells Worf and Riker, I think, he tells them that once they landed, they didn't know what to do with themselves because they didn't have a hive mind to control them. So many of them just starved to death. Like, they didn't even know how to feed themselves because you don't have to do that when you're a drone. So when Lore showed up and promised to be that voice, to be the one voice to unify them, they were like, let's go. But of course, Lore's like the worst person to listen to, right? He also manipulated Data because back in that episode Brothers we were just talking about, where Noonien Soong had sent a homing beacon to bring, maybe that is where did we last see Lore? Maybe Lore came after that. Hold on. Nope, it wasn't Lore in the crystalline entity. It was Lore from Brothers who escaped on a shuttle, I think. Yeah. So in any case, now that I think about it, but Noonien Soong had created an emotions chip for Data. He didn't know Lore had been reassembled. Last thing he knew, he had left Lore on the colony where Data was found. So Lore came, turned off Data, as he does, and stole the emotions chip from Soong and then beat the crap out of him. And then Soong was about to die anyway, so then he died shortly after that. So now Lore is back in the picture, and he's got Data's emotions chip. And he's using it to manipulate Data because he hasn't felt emotions before, but when he's around these Borg drones, he feels rage. And while rage is not a positive emotion, in his estimation, though Troy says there are no good and bad emotions, the fact that he's feeling anything is just like addictive to him. It's like a drug. So he's like, yes, like I love feeling emotions. So Laura's like, you can feel as much as you want as long as you come with me, dear brother. Because Laura is just a power-hungry mofo. It's not enough for him to have a whole planet of drones. He also needs to have Data dangling on a little string because that's how he rolls. So he's totally manipulated Data. Data still, at first, Data still has his has his clear mind and is only being tempted by these emotions, right? And he's like, I want it so badly, I'm just going to go follow Lore. So at first, it's just like this temptation and this, like a little bit of a taste of that emotional drug. But later on, when Geordi and Picard and Troy get kidnapped by Lore and they get put into a brig of sorts, Geordi can see with his visor that there's some kind of signal that's being constantly sent to Data. So now Lore has leveled up his plan. He's not just manipulating him with this emotions chip. He's also using some actual signal to kind of like change Data's behavior and his morality matrix and his ethics and all this other sort of thing. Kind of like the Trek reviewer was saying earlier about, I think it was you that was saying about the Doctor being, or maybe it was PS2 Chipper, about the Doctor, whoever said it, the Doctor being like hacked, if that counted. Because a similar thing happened with the Doctor where he became kind of like cruel and heartless and stuff like that. So now this is happening to Data, like his personality is being transformed. There is still some part of him in there who can make choices, and he is not totally on board with Lore's choices. But Lore is such a smooth talker that he keeps being like, it's fine, Data, it's fine, just trust me. And Data's like, okay. And then he like, you know, tilts the emotions a little more or activates the field a little bit more. And Data's like, okay, yeah, like this totally works. Well, anyways, Geordi comes up with a way to deactivate this field. They MacGyver it. They deactivate the field. It shuts Data off. It kind of reboots him. And when he comes back, his ethics are like back to normal. So in this big scene, like the clip that I just showed, Lore was like, to prove your loyalty to me, shoot Picard dead. And Data's about to shoot him. And then he's like, wait, no, that's not right. I'm not going to shoot him dead. And then Lore's like, how sad. And he does this speech where he's like, drones, listen to me. I know you have all suffered because, by the way, while he's trying to make these drones technologically perfect, he's just mutilating them because he doesn't know what he's doing. So you see all these drones with like gear stuck out of them and they're just like non-functional. It's really sad and tragic and awful and gross. And he's just mutilating them and he's just got endless drones to just practice on. So at this stage, he goes, drones, my fellow drones, you know, he's like, I know you've been asked to sacrifice a lot, but I'm also willing to sacrifice a lot. In true psychopathic fashion, that means he's willing to sacrifice someone else, not himself or anything that would actually hurt him. So he goes, I'm willing to sacrifice my own dear brother for the cause. So he goes to shoot Data, and that's when Worf shows up and Hugh shows up, and then the good Borg drones fight the bad Borg drones, and then Lore goes running, and then Data goes running, and then Data ends up shutting him down and disassembling him. Good for you, Data, because Lore is a piece of work. But I love this episode, and I think it's really interesting. Drones, lend me your ears. I think it's really interesting that Data's, you know, this is not necessarily full-on brainwash, but that Data's behavior is being transformed, but it's kind of little by little by little and in various different ways. Part of it is that signal, that field that Lore has generated around the compound. Part of it is the emotions chip, so it's really like tempting him with this addictive emotion. Part of it is Lore's just persuasive conversation, right? He's just tricky. He's slick. He's being able to confuse Data and turn him around. There's a lot of layers to the devious skill set that Lore has. So I think this is just like such a fun episode and perfectly fits in this category. Okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we're going to go to episode number 6 on the list, because I think we're at 6. When I think about it, the Borg in that episode reminds me of Scientologists. I didn't see that one before. I heard that in the early versions of the script for Descent that had either Crusher or Troy getting killed, just in case one of the actresses did not sign a deal for season 7. Yeah, I don't know how true that is, though. Like, that's kind of a thing that I've heard from time to time of like, oh, this character was going to get killed off. There's no reason to kill off a character, really, in Star Trek, even if you want to write them off or they don't sign their contract again. You just send them back to Starfleet Medical. You just ship them off to another ship, like, or in the case of Pulaski, they just disappear. Also, even if you were to kill somebody, there's always bringing them back with the transporters, having some kind of clone. You know, it's just not worth the emotional fallout to kill somebody as a character unless they're going to stay dead, which is why it was so shocking when Jadzia Dax died in DS9, because it's like, you know she's going to stay dead. Like, she's not coming back. She's gone. So that's like the emotional turmoil on your fans and how many fans you will turn to haters from permanently killing a character is not worth it when you can just write them off the show and then bring them back when they change their minds. But could be true. I don't know. Yes, Brent Spiner has great range. I think this episode and also the episode Masks, which I know my co-host of the TNG podcast did not like. I love Masks. I love seeing Brent Spiner's range, like all the different things. And the voice he does in Masks always reminds me of the voice he did in Independence Day,
when like the alien wraps his little tentacle around his throat and he's like speaking through him as the doctor and he's like, we want to kill you all, or whatever he says. So good. Lore and Dukat, yikes. Yeah, that's true. That's true. The funny thing about people like Lore and Dukat, though, is like, they would be a force, right? They would be such a force, but they don't play well with others, which is why Kai Wynn and Dukat were a better partnership. Because Kai Wynn, although she does want all the power and glory, she at least knows that she needs people to work with to get what she wants. We've known that from the beginning. She's willing to work with people to get what she wants. Lore is only willing to manipulate people to get what he wants, but he's not willing to really like partner. Dukat is also willing to partner, but he will stab you in the back the first second he gets. But he will partner with you for absolutely as long as he needs to and not 1 second longer. Yeah, we got some super good villains. Exactly. The only reason to kill is a producer's spitefulness. I agree. No, Pulaski's off living. Oh yeah, you're right. Pulaski's living her best life with Riker's dad, with Kyle Riker, off on Risa. I forgot. Tasha got killed first. Yeah, Tasha got killed first. Right, Tasha got killed because she quit the show and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then they wrote her back on as Sela because they were like, wouldn't it be, because she was like, wouldn't it be fun if my character just came back? So there you go. Lore is probably a fully functional predator. You're so funny. I did see clips of Brent Spiner on Night Court. Okay, let's go to the 6th episode on the list. If it's wrong, I'll play the 7th.
Season 5, Episode 14, Conundrum. The Enterprise crew suddenly find themselves all suffering from amnesia. As they try to piece together what happened to them, they discover that they're at war and under strict orders to maintain radio silence with Starfleet Command about their secret mission. After easily destroying the one and only Lycean ship that shows up to challenge them, Picard starts having second thoughts about their mission and his shifty first officer, Commander Macduff.
This is another one of my favorite episodes. I love this episode so much. I love the mystery. I love the intrigue. I love when the crew wakes up. Literally, this happens to me every time I watch this episode. I've seen it like 100 times. When the episodes, when they have like that blackout moment and they all wake up and this new first officer is on the bridge, Kieran Macduff, and he's like, what's going on? Every time I watch this episode, I think to myself, was he there a second ago? And I never go back to check, like, at what scene does he show up. But the way he is just like, oh gosh, what happened? The way he's just playing into all of it, it seems like he has always been there. And it totally throws me off, even though I know what's going to happen. Because I'm always like, wait, did I miss the second where he shows up? And when they go through this, another thing that guy does that's so slick and tricky is at some point, Dr. Crusher is like, I can try a technique to bring back our memories, because our memories have been suppressed about who exactly we are. We're trusting the computer to tell us who we are. And Macduff is like, I volunteer for this mission. Of course he does, because he can't be effective because he's the one doing this. So he's like, okay, I volunteer. And they're like, it's experimental procedure. He's like, that's fine. So Beverly starts doing her thing, and then he starts shaking and convulsing like he's having a seizure so that she won't try this on anyone else. Right? And that is a genius move right there. That is super clever to keep your lie going. It's so wild, and we always say this whenever I review this episode, which happens a lot because I love it. It's like, if he had this technology to wipe people's minds, how did he not have the technology to destroy the Lyceans? Because this, I feel like you could do anything with some kind of technology like this. Yeah, this episode is great. It's got mystery. It's got intrigue. We don't really know what's going on. I also loved in the beginning when they're trying to figure out who's in charge, someone, I don't remember who, but someone looks at Picard and is just like, you've got 4 pips. He points at his pips and goes, well, whatever's going on, you're clearly the one in charge. And then Worf points at his beautiful ball drake, this nice like metal sash he's got on. He says, wait a minute, I am also highly decorated. And they're like, oh yeah. And Picard's like, look, it doesn't matter who's in charge. We just need to figure out what's going on. And Worf is like, we need weapons, arm the torpedoes, like charge the phaser banks. And Picard's like, wait, shouldn't we verify orders or something? Worf is like, there's no time, weapons. It's so great. And then Macduff is just like, yep, weapons right away, sir, because this is his big plan. So I love all of that. And then when the computer is like, Captain Picard, then Worf is like, and he's like, hey, sorry about pretending to be the captain because you were actually the captain and I was confused by the Baldrake situation. And Picard's like, it's fine. It's fine. Like, we need to figure out what's going on here. Don't worry about that. Which again is, I love that even though so much of their memory has been lost, so much of their personality is still there. This is the episode, Nadia, where they make the Sumerian sunset made in the traditional style. So Data thinks he's a bartender. And I don't know what Riker... Oh, I guess maybe Riker's the second officer because Data is the bartender. I don't know. I don't remember all of this part. But yeah, this is just a fun episode. We also see Ro and Riker hook up. Ugh. And then at the end, we see like Ro and Troy having a conversation, kind of like giggling and looking over at Riker. And he's like, oh, he's so embarrassed because now he's hooked up with both of them. This is just weird. Like, this is just a weird beat. It's a weird moment in the episode where I'm like, are they comparing notes? And if so, why? To what end? What will they get from this conversation? Is this going to bring Troy and Ro closer together because they both screwed the same dude? No. So I don't know. I guess it's just a bit of lighthearted fun at the end of that brutal murder that happened on the bridge when they were like shooting McDuff until he finally keels over. Anyways, I don't know. I'm going to check the chat. Then we're going to do the last episode on the list before I lose my mind, because clearly you guys can see today has just been a day. So the Trek reviewer says, could you imagine if Dukat was the Borg Queen's Locutus? So in the movie First Contact, which I also adore, I love that movie, the Queen is trying to persuade Data to become her Locutus, right? Instead of trying to assimilate him, which she does not even try, she does not even attempt it. She attempts instead to seduce him over to her side because she wants an equal. She does not tell Data this, but Picard figures it out. And he shows up and he says, let my crew go, let my people go, stop trying to F up Earth, and I will be your Locutus. I will be your partner. I will be your equal. And then the Queen turns to Data and says, I already have my equal, right? She's so happy that she has Data. And then Data's like, psych, like, I'm going to betray you because really I don't want any part of this. And I remember thinking many times, like, man, if only she had found Lore, because Lore would have been like, let's go. I've been trying to do this my whole life. All I ever wanted was to control stuff. Let me control everything. And I've said this before, and I've heard, I think some of you have said, like, oh, but Lore wouldn't go along with it, or he would be too power hungry or whatever. I think Lore would be super pumped about this situation being the Borg Queen's side piece. I think he'd be like all about that life. He could control everything and not have any real responsibilities because the Queen's really in charge. I think this would be his dream role. Now, I have never thought until this moment, the Trek reviewer, about Dukat being the Queen's Locutus. Oh my gosh, would he love that role? Would he love that role? Not only would he love it, he would excel. I feel like Dukat, because he's such a smooth talker, I feel like he could convince people to voluntarily become Borg drones. Do you remember the episode Covenant where he convinces a whole bunch of Bajorans that he's the Messiah or whatever? And then he tries to get them to all take cyanide pills, all of them except for him, because he still has more missions to do, where apparently they don't. That's how slick this guy is. He's convinced of people who've been oppressed for the last 60 years by people just like him, including him specifically. He himself was in charge of Deep Space Nine before it was renamed Deep Space Nine, where he was actively oppressing people and, taking advantage of Bajoran women and all of this. But he's able to convince this whole group of Bajorans that he's somehow a good guy who's changed now. That is some slick talking right there. He's able to convince the people that his baby, his half Bajoran, half Cardassian, blue baby, or green baby, whatever color that baby was when it came out, wasn't the color of Bajoran. He was able to convince them that this was some kind of immaculate conception situation and not a shameless affair. This guy is slick. So I feel like if Dukat paired up with the Borg Queen, the entire Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Gamma quadrants would be in some serious trouble. Because people would be lining up to get some nanoprobes, okay? Dukat would be like, come, friends, listen. Life can be so much better. And they'd be like, yeah, life could be so much better. That would be a terrifying combination. Such a great idea. Okay, I'm going to read a few more things in the chats now that I went on that random tangent. And then we'll do the last episode on the list. Riker's mom has got it going on. That's so funny. Ugh, can you imagine Riker having to call Pulaski mom? Hey, mom. Was this the one with Stephen Hawking? Stephen Hawking was in Nth Degree, the one where Barclay becomes really, really smart. I'm pretty sure, because then he was like playing cards with Stephen Hawking and a bunch of other geniuses, I think. But I could be wrong. I always think that this new officer is real. Yeah, me too, Patty. I'm always like, wait, was he there? I love Riker and Roker. I love that you love Riker and Ro. And Amnesia Ray wouldn't work on my ex-wife. She don't forget nothing. I think Tasha was the only woman in the main cast not to hook up with a Riker. Guinan didn't hook up with Riker. If she had her way, she would have hooked up with Picard, but she did not hook up with Riker. Do you live in her head rent-free? That's funny. I miss Ro. I wish she would have stayed through the series. Yeah, Ro was such a great character. I really liked Ro. Ducat is Jim Jones. 100%. Ducat is just, he's a one-man menace to society, that one. I think Q had something to do with the Borg not being able to take complete control of Picard in Best of Both Worlds. So that'd be interesting. There's no evidence for that, like in the actual movie. However, it would make total sense because of how Q is so obsessed with Picard and is always stepping in to make sure that Picard doesn't like destroy the planet or the human race and stuff like that. Okay, on that note, let's go to episode 7 on the list. Season 6, Episode 14, Memorial. 4 members of Voyager's crew return from an away mission and suddenly start suffering from vivid, traumatic flashbacks of participating in a massacre on an alien colony. One by one, each member of the crew starts experiencing these disturbing memories in bursts and all out of order. They discover that these memories are actually not theirs, but instead are being projected by a malfunctioning device created over 300 years ago. I love this episode. This is another one where I'm just like, I can't stop watching it. It's also pretty intense. It's also really sad and disturbing, but I think the story is really interesting. It's a good way to, and they've done this a couple times on Voyager. I could probably pull up the couple of times they did this because I'm thinking of the other time they did this with B'Elanna, where one of this alien woman, these 3 alien people came on the ship. I think it was 3 of them, and one of the women like implanted all of her memories into B'Elanna, traumatizing her for life because she wanted to share her story before she died or something. So they've done this a few times, something like this a few times on Voyager, but this one I really like because in the beginning we see these 4 people come back from their away mission. And they're all just like sick of each other because they were on this away mission, I think for a week. And so they get back and they're like, if I never see you again, it will be too soon. But then they start having all these flashbacks of being in this war. And then they're like, oh my gosh, we were in a war. Like we killed a bunch of people and we were like battling and all this stuff. They're having all this trauma. And they get together and they're talking about it with Janeway. And hopefully the doctor's on the screen or something because this is like a situation where you need a doctor. But they're talking about what happened and the doctor's just like, but there's no evidence of this. You're saying you were shot or, you were injured. There's no evidence that you were ever shot. There's no evidence of any healing. There's no like that, but physically these things did not happen to you. So what is going on? But they remember them. And you see like in that clip I just showed how Tom Paris has like the dark circles under his eyes. They're all freaking out. At one point, Neelix like kind of kidnaps poor Naomi Wildman and is trying to keep her safe from all the gunfire that he's hearing in his head. And he like holds her in the cafeteria and he's like, stay down. He's got a phaser and he's like, I'll protect you. And she's like, what's going on, Neelix? What's going on? And everybody's like, oh my gosh. And 7 of 9 is like, Neelix, put the phaser down. And he's like, leave her alone. Stay away from her. I mean, this episode just like, again, it hits the feels where you're just like, something is going on. Something terrible happened. They cannot get to the bottom of it. It doesn't seem plausible as well because they're like, you were gone for whatever. They were gone for a week. Let's say they're gone for like 8 days or something. You're gone for 8 days. You did not have time to be conscripted into an army and then fight a battle and then be in this massacre and then come and then get on the shuttle and like be memory wiped. Like that's a lot of stuff to happen in such a short amount of time, especially considering that we have the log for your shuttle, which says that you went and surveyed these planets, you turned around and came back. And that's how long it would take to do that. There's no evidence this happened, but their memories are vivid, they're real, and they're all intertwined. Which, how did they even do that? I don't know. But they remember each other's characters in these memories. They're like, you were the one. And that clip I just showed, oh, such a good clip, where Tom Paris is just like upset and he's like, so at first in that clip, they're reliving what they remember. And they're like, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this. And then Tom gets up and he's like, we shouldn't have been there. We shouldn't have done it. And then Chakotay's like, we did what we had to do. There was no way we would have known. And they just start fighting about this event that they were never a part of, right? But they remember all of the roles that they played and the emotions that they felt and the people that they saw and the people that they killed and all of this stuff. It's crazy. So Janeway's like, we need to get to the bottom of this. So let's retrace the shuttle steps. So she takes the entire ship back through the shuttle steps to see what happened. Who are these people who kidnapped my crew and forced them to fight in this war? Like, what happened? And as they start going, everybody on the ship starts having traumatic, vivid memories attacking them. People can't sleep. People can't eat. People are losing their freaking minds because of all of the things that they remember doing to other people, like all of the atrocities that they remember committing. So they discover the planet where all of this signal is being emitted. It's a memorial that was set up 300 years ago to remember remember the victims and remember the incident so that it would never happen again. So the intentions were good. It's just been glitching because it's running low on power. So it's sending out these images sporadically and out of order, and it's all messed up. So then Janeway and Chakotay have this conversation where Chakotay is like, good, I'm glad the power's running out. Let's blow this effer up, you know? And Janeway's like, no. I think we need to give it more power. I want this thing to last for another 300 years. And Chakotay is like, what the F? Like, it has traumatized everybody on the crew. We're freaking out. People are traumatized for life about events that they did not commit. This thing should be destroyed. And Janeway's like, no, the whole purpose of this is to remember what happened so that it will never happen again. That is the whole purpose. And we need to honor that. So she says, look, we'll kind of like split the difference. We will repower this device so that it will work for another 300 years, but we'll also put some buoys around this, space neighborhood so that people know what they're getting into. So that they will know, hey, if you cross this barrier, you're going to have a whole bunch of traumatic memories. But it won't be, I think, as bad as what happened to the crew because now the device is working properly. So I'm assuming it's, maybe the memories won't be as, I don't know, maybe they'll seem more fake. I'm not really sure. But my impression is that if the device was working properly, it wouldn't have torn the crew's minds apart as thoroughly as it did. So that's what they decided to do. I mean, it's Captain, so she's going to do what she's going to do, right? And that's what they decide to do. They get on the ship and they fly away. I think this episode is so good and so disturbing. And so watching them piece together what actually happened is fascinating. I love the way that they wrote this episode. We're like, but what did happen? And they're showing us all out of order. And we're like, but what's going on? And who are these people? And who's shooting? And why are they even there? And all these different pieces. And what I really love, because we were talking before about range, and I was saying how the actors don't always get a chance to show their range when a lot of times they're just saying, I captain, or shields to, full impulse ahead, or shields are at 80%. There's not a lot of things you can do with that particular line. But episodes like this give us a chance to see their range. And I really enjoyed seeing how each of the characters reacted. Harry, Chakotay, Neelix, and Tom Paris, and how each of them, from the memories that they have, like how they responded to this situation. So Harry, for example, was like the coward, right? He was like so afraid when all the shooting started, the character whose memories he recalls. And so he had like crawled into this cave to hide from all the shooting. And then he found an old man and his grown-up daughter, I think, hiding in the cave. And they were like, please don't shoot us. But then one of them dropped a can. And so it made a loud sound. And it scared him. And he thought they were shooting at him. So he guns them down. I mean, it's just like, oh my gosh. And then one of them, I think maybe it was Janeway's memories, is the person who was in charge of everything. How did the device know that? But is the person who was like, we have to clear up. Oh no, she wasn't. It was somebody else who was like, we have to clear up the evidence of this crime. When we got here, the colonists were already gone. So that's the story we're telling, and that's the story we're sticking to. And Jane was like, no, this is, again, in her memories of this other person's memories. She's like, no, we have to remember what happened here. We have to tell people what happened. They'll know it's an accident. It was a mistake. And the person in charge is like, no, they won't believe us. We have to get rid of the evidence. And so they start blasting all the bodies, all the people that they've killed. They start like turning them to ash so that there's no evidence that the bodies were even there. So it's like, insult to injury. All these people were murdered and now they don't even get a burial or an acknowledgement of their existence. They're just going to be turned into ash. And then your report is going to say the colonists were never there. And they're just going to be like missing colonists. They must have taken some ship and gotten lost in space. How sad. This episode's heartbreaking, challenging, but it's a good one. I think it's got a lot of layers and emotional depth. Okay, I'm going to check the chat. And that will be it for today. Patty says a powerful episode. PS2 Tripper says PTSD. Yeah, everyone is like completely traumatized, which understandably, but they didn't even do any of these things. And that was Chakotay's point. He's like, they didn't even do this. Now they have these memories that they're going to carry forever of stuff they didn't even experience.
The Trek reviewer says, in Star Trek the original series, there was an episode where spores took over the crew's minds, and then there was Landru. Yes, I really like the Landru episode. That is a good episode of brainwashing because, yeah, they were literally brainwashed in that episode. Not just the inhabitants of that planet, but the crew of the Archon, the USS Archon, that went to that planet for whatever reason. Crews need to do that. They were all brainwashed. And then at the very beginning of the episode, at the open of that episode, Sulu was brainwashed. And so Kirk and Spock and McCoy were trying to not get brainwashed throughout the episode. And somebody else. Who was the other person? And someone else, I don't remember. I think was with them. Joy and contentment. Yeah, with Landru. I didn't see the Spores episode in TOS, though. I haven't seen that one yet. If I ever do a series with 7 of 9 as captain, they can get Naomi Wildman to come back as a junior bridge officer. Oh my gosh. Especially with what they did to freaking, Icheb. At least we can get to see Naomi Wildman be a grown-up. And we don't even need the same actress, honestly, because she was so little. We just need an actress who can be Naomi Wildman. I'd be okay with that. Fun will now commence. Terry said he had planned to bring Naomi into Picard Season 3 as a Fenris Ranger. I'm glad he didn't. I want her in Starfleet, but a more idealized version based on her perception gained from Voyager. Yeah, while it would have been super cool, I remember you saying this, Josh, while it would have been super cool to see Naomi Wildman again and to see her be this ranger and that would have been really cool and really fun. At the same time, she was so Little Miss Starfleet. And we saw what happened with Wesley Crusher when he was like Little Mr. Starfleet. And then when we saw him in The Journey's End in Season 7, when he was all bitter and decided to go off with the Traveler, and he was just a total douchebag, right? And he was all disillusioned and he was like, the Federation sucks and you guys are all dumb. And it was just like not the look. So there is a part of me that loves that idealized, wide-eyed version of Naomi Wildman that just thinks Starfleet's the best. And there's a part of me that just wants to see her keep that, like somehow protect that into her adulthood and not become jaded and bitter and emo. But also, it would have been cool to see her as a ranger. It would have been cool to see her in any way. And like I said, it doesn't even need to be that same actress because I don't know if she's even still acting now. But it'd be cool to see a Naomi Wildman show up and just to see her again and see what she's doing would be fun. DJ Magic says, did I miss the Miles O'Brien episode when he lives out his 30-year prison sentence? No, you did not. I did not do that episode. I did think about it, but I didn't think about it as much as a brainwash. But it absolutely would fit in this episode. Definitely gets an honorable mention. If I had it to do over, I would for sure put that in because that episode was so good. What was the name of that episode? If you remember the name of that episode, drop it in the chat so I can say it out loud. But that episode was so good when O'Brien was in jail for 20 years, but really not in jail. It was like 20 minutes. Like, oof, man, that was a great episode. I love Tom's television show morphing into the battle. Wasn't that so cool? And he's like watching it and then all of a sudden he's in it. That was very cool. Oh, you all love me very much. I love you all too. Okay, so that is it. Good night, Nadia. I would also like to see Ro Lauren and Wesley Crusher meet each other. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got to see Ro again in Picard. I'm glad we got to see Wesley in Picard, and I'm really glad we got to see Wesley in Prodigy, because that was probably my favorite Wesley comeback of ever. Okay, that being said, I am done. I will see you all next time. Hold on. I don't know if I'm supposed to hit stop or if I'm supposed to hit end. I'm going to hit stop and then I'm going to hit end. So hopefully you guys can see this. But thank you all for coming. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already. And I will see you